You're listening to the Dibbly Dobbly podcast. Remember to like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell to make sure you get the latest episodes of the podcast. Be sure to like and share our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and on Instagram.
Hi, my name is Tina Gough. I'm the vice captain of the Germany women's cricket team, and you're listening to the Dibbly Dobbly podcast.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Dibbly Dobbly podcast. And on the podcast, we have started a new series on the podcast looking at associate nations within cricket and how they are developing the game in their country. Many of us cricket fans know so much about the established cricketing countries and not enough on the associate nations who play cricket. So it would be nice to learn about those associate countries, and via the podcast, people can learn more as well. For today's Associate Cricket Series episode, we are discussing all things German women's cricket. And joining me to discuss and talk all things German women's cricket is the vice captain of the German women's cricket team, Tina Gough. Tina, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you, Tina, and thank you so much for agreeing to come on and speak about women's cricket in Germany, because a lot of people listening and watching this podcast would say, cricket in Germany? No. It's more other sports like football and all those other sports that Germany plays. But cricket does have a place in Germany. Both men and women play. So I think everyone will have a real eye-opener in this episode, listening to your journey, first of all, but also learning more about the women's team and how the game's going from a women's perspective in Germany. So I think everyone's looking forward to this chat. Certainly I am. And I hope we're going to have a great time and just talk about cricket as we usually do on the podcast anyway. So let's get into it, Tina. And as I do with all my guests that I've interviewed on the podcast, I like to take them back to when they first got into cricket. And it's been very fascinating listening to people's memories on how they started to get into cricket. So Tina, let's go back to the very beginning, growing up. What were your earliest memories of watching, playing, and even going to the cricket? And who were some of the cricketing idols that you looked up to growing up?
So I actually, in the context of other people, got into cricket quite late. So I was mostly playing football when I was younger with my brother in the garden. He's 2 years older than me. And I think the first time I really got into cricket was when I was 11. So that was in the summer of 2005, which for most cricket fans was quite a legendary, definitely for English cricket fans was quite a legendary summer of cricket. So I was 11 at that time and still playing in the garden with my brother. And of course, then the famous Ashes series led by Michael Vaughan. And I think then talking about legends and icons, probably Freddie Flintoff is up there, and Simon Jones as well as a swing bowler. So those are the kind of first players I really saw watching on TV. And yeah, trying to copy them in the garden, bowling and batting. And at the age of 11, then I went to a local club near Birmingham in England, where I grew up. And it all started from there, really. Luckily, they actually had a women's team at that time, which, I mean, we're not talking too long ago, but 2005, it wasn't as widespread women's cricket as it is now. And they had a women's team, and it all kicked off from there, started playing club cricket and then kicked on to county cricket. And yeah, almost 20 years later, here we are.
Yeah, no, it's quite interesting how people get into the game and get drawn into certain series like 2005 Ashes, of course, which is quite a memorable series. And you get hooked on cricket for life from then on in. And obviously now you're playing cricket in both Germany and England because your family's from both countries, of course. Experiencing the game in two different countries. So obviously, experiencing that growing up and, embarking on this journey, which is pretty amazing for you because you've achieved a lot of great things in your time as a professional international cricketer now. Did you have any cricketing idols growing up? Anyone that really struck you from a women's point of view? Not so much from men's cricket, as you mentioned, but from a women's standpoint.
So very early on when I went to secondary school, so at the age of 11, Lucy Pearson was the cricket coach there, or the sports coach there. And she had a very good career for England. She's also left arm bowler, 6 foot, almost 6 foot. And that's everything I am as well. So that was like the first proper idol I had growing up. And seeing her as kind of an England player, but then she was also a cricket coach at my school. That was kind of a huge step into, you know, women's cricket. And then more recently, there's so many players that I admire for what they have achieved in the game. So Meg Lanning, Elise Perry, they're both obviously Australians, so maybe seen as the enemy, but there's just so many players I admire for their skills and how they've really brought women's cricket to the public consciousness, really.
Yeah, fantastic. It's good to hear that. And good to hear that you had certain role models and people that you looked up to, and know that, you know, women's cricket's actually a thing that you can actually do. You can actually go and play cricket. It's not just for men or boys. It's for women's and girls to play as well. And we're seeing more and more of that now in the women's game. It's getting much more popular and developed around all parts of the world, and inspiring young girls to take up the game and love the game and cherish the game and enjoy the game and play the game as you have enjoyed it throughout your lifetime, and playing for Germany, of course, for the women's team there. So it was pretty good to hear about your introduction into cricket, how that journey started from the formative years. And now I want to turn to the international career, how that journey started, because in 2015, you first played for Germany, but Germany didn't have women's T20 national status at that time. They were just playing games against other countries. But then in 2016, you moved back from England to Germany, to Hamburg. And from that moment on, you played for Germany ever since, and you haven't looked back. And that's how the whole international journey that you've embarked on started. And then in 2017, you were appointed as the vice captain, which is a big honor in itself. And then in 2023, during the women's T20 World Cup qualifiers, you became the first male or female player from Germany to score 1,000 runs in T20 internationals, which was an incredible achievement, something that you must be proud of, even though you don't play the game for stats, but something to look back on and say, yeah, to be the first person to do that, it's a great achievement. And then in 2019, you made your women's T20 national debut. And this is where Germany made their debut in terms of a women's T20 national, because the ICC gave status to all its members in the women's game to have all T20s as T20 nationals. And that game, Germany played against Scotland. And you were captain for that game because your regular captain was out because she was injured, and you captained the team throughout that whole entire tournament. And you batted at number 4, and you made 3 off 10 with the bat, and with the ball you got none for 11 from 2 overs, which is not bad. But in the end, Scotland won, and won by 8 wickets. And from then on in, 38 matches you've played thus far, and hoping to play more. Your record's pretty good with bat and ball across 2 disciplines there. So Tina, tell us about that moment when you realised that you would be in the team and were to become an international cricketer. Tell us about that moment and that feeling that you were about to embark on this journey.
Yeah, it was quite a surreal feeling. Obviously, it hadn't been the first time that I'd represented Germany in a cricket match, but it certainly felt special to do it in a T20 qualifier, World Cup qualifier, and then to be captain in those circumstances, obviously because our regular captain, Anu, was out injured. That was even more of an honour then to, be in the history books then as the first ever captain of a German women's national team. And it was crazy then looking back that it actually all started with a tweet, which is is weird to say because I went on my year abroad as part of studying, and I came to Germany. And obviously I played cricket at this point throughout my childhood and growing up. And I tweeted something along the lines of, it's a shame that there's no cricket in Germany. Something along those lines. Obviously, I was quite naive at that point. And I got a reply back from the Cricket Germany Twitter account saying, we're here, we do play cricket, come join us. So that's how it all started, really, with the German cricket. And that was, I think, as you said, 2015. That was when I was on my year abroad. And then I got in it through that, obviously, because I was born in Germany. I had a German passport. I still have a German passport. My mum's German. So there was no problems with eligibility or anything like that. So yeah, from starting from a tweet to then being the captain in a T20I World Cup qualifier was quite surreal, a surreal couple of years. And yeah, to look back then of what I've achieved, I think I can be quite proud of that. And it's also just amazing how cricket in Germany and the national team has developed in so short years.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always a special feeling, isn't it, whenever you get a cap presented to you in a cricket team, because it's a special moment when you make your debut in any form of cricket, any level, whether it be international or club. It's always a special moment you don't forget. Obviously, didn't quite go Germany's way in that game, but it was a good feeling for the rest of the group as well to know that we've become the history makers here, and we've set the foundation and the platform for future teams going forward for the women's team in Germany to carry on the legacy that we're going to leave behind when we all retire eventually, in that natural cycle and process that all teams go through in sport. So, you, as I said, your numbers are pretty good. You've scored 101 not out. That's pretty good. Tell us about the 100. Where did that happen?
Yeah, so that happened in outside of Vienna in Austria, and it was quite a surreal situation. I think it was, I can't remember if it was 2020 or 2021, but it was definitely right in the middle of the pandemic. So we were, I think, one of the few the countries to be playing cricket at all at that time. Obviously, because of the nature of Europe, we can actually hop across to Austria quite quickly. And yeah, so we were one of the few teams playing any kind of cricket at that time. I think men's or women's cricket, there was barely any games played throughout the pandemic. Somehow we managed to sneak in a 5-game series against Austria in Austria. And yeah, so I think it was the second or third game of the series, and we managed to break a lot of records that year. So that series. So we had, I think, a couple of hat tricks. My opening batter, I think she also scored 100 in the first game or the second game, and then I followed up the next game. So it was good from our perspective to kind of get a few records in the book, and it was also amazing at that point just to play cricket at all. And we were so grateful for the Austrian team to host us and to be able to put it on in the middle of the pandemic with all the measures. And it's wild when you look back at it that we had to, disinfect the ball after every over, and we weren't allowed to high five. And yeah, I think cricket throughout the pandemic was just such a weird time. But it was a completely memorable time for me then, because I can look back on it and say, yeah, that was the time when I scored so far, hopefully my only T20I century. So I'll definitely look back on that fondly, but it was definitely a weird experience as well to be doing that in the middle of the pandemic.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, looking back at those weird times and just saying, wow, that was pretty weird for a couple of years there. Oh, and I also scored a century as well. That helped.
Exactly.
Yeah, must have been weird celebrating.
Yeah, it was a weird one. So because of the fact that there were not many games happening at the time, there was actually an enormous amount of coverage. So I think the ICC accounts tweeted quite a lot about it just because there was not much cricket to talk about. So suddenly we were kind of thrown into the limelight. Anu, our captain, got a double hat trick. Another of our players got a hat trick as well. So suddenly we were kind of, for a few days, the talk of the cricketing world. But yeah, luckily we were in a kind of bubble ourselves, so we could have a little bit of, contact with one another. But it was definitely not the same as if you had it in just the, before the pandemic or after the pandemic, where you could really celebrate. This was kind of going back to the hotel room and sitting by yourself and looking at social media and kind of the comments that came on there, rather than being able to celebrate it. And there wasn't really any fans there either because of not being able to travel. So it was a strange one, but definitely memorable looking back.
Yeah, so most of your family as well, not being able to be there at the ground, obviously, because of the measures and all that stuff. But they must have been very proud of your achievement, scoring that 100, as any family would be of their child in a sporting arena.
Yeah, definitely. And luckily, we are able to stream most of our games. So my parents back in England are able to watch, and my brother as well, and everyone else across the world. Especially those games were quite well streamed and well watched. And it's nice then, just with today's technology, that even if friends and family aren't there, they can kind of watch along. And I've got some of my teammates at work watching and kind of looking at what I'm doing while I'm not at work. So it's a cool environment to be in then, that even though it's not filling stadiums or anything like that, to have that support from across the world is really nice.
Yeah. Is that the only 100 you've scored in your entire cricket career, from growing up to playing international cricket? Is that the only 100 you've scored, or you scored other hundreds as well in that time?
I've scored one or two. So I did score an unofficial 100 for Germany before we were a T20I nation. I think that was 107. Last year I scored 100 for my club, Milford Hall in England. So I've scored one or two, but obviously an international 100 is kind of an extra special achievement. And even if I never score another 100, I think I'll be happy with that one in particular.
Yeah, absolutely. No one can take that away from you. That 100, it's always there forever. It's going to be there in your stats forever. Your 100 that you scored in that game. Also with the ball, you've taken 27 wickets. Before we talk about the bowling, you mentioned before we started recording this episode about your batting average in T20 cricket at the moment, in women's T20s. It's quite unique, isn't it? So share us, what's that special fact?
Yeah, so I think at the moment, as of today, I haven't checked in the last couple of days, I've got the highest batting average in world cricket for women. I think Talia McGrath is very much hot on my heels, and she's obviously putting in some amazing innings for Australia. So every time Australia are playing, I see whether she's kind of scored big, and then she'll overtake me again. So at the moment, I'm not playing any cricket at all. So I'm just hanging on for dear life for the top spot. But it was quite a cool record to have. I'm quite proud of that as well. But just to see the list of names that I'm kind of in amongst, it's quite surreal as well. Some of the superstars of world cricket are up there, and then me at the top for now. So that's a bit of a weird one, but I'm sure it won't last. I'm sure there's plenty of better and younger players who are coming through who are going to grab that top spot soon enough.
Yeah, but it's quite an interesting fact and unique in a way, to have those sort of records ongoing. But 42 is not bad as a batting average in T20s anyway. So if you keep scoring at a good rate and get some big scores, and who knows, you may be on the top of the list for some time to come. So yeah, that's quite interesting, that stat that you shared with us there. I mentioned before the bowling. 27 wickets, average of 16 at the moment. It's not bad in T20s. Best of 3 for 11 is not bad. So the bowling, any memorable spells or performances that really stick in your mind when it comes to the bowling side of your game?
Yeah, it's interesting with the bowling because I was growing up always just a bowler, really. So I used to open the bowling for Warwickshire, for county, and batting was always just something I did because it's good fun to hit the ball, but it was never something I really concentrated on. And as you mentioned earlier as well, the first T20I we played, I batted at 4. So it took me a while and a lot of persuasion from my coaches to actually open the batting. So now it's kind of flipped to a situation where I'm more of a batting all-rounder than a bowling all-rounder. But in terms of the bowling, I think the 3 for 11 might have been in that Austria series as well. And I think that was probably the most memorable spell because there was one wicket where, and that clip went quite, not viral, but it was quite well watched on the internet because I got the wicket bowled and then ended up on my back somehow in my follow through. I think Mark Wood does that a lot, just ending up on the floor, looking at the sky. So that was quite a memorable spell. And yeah, otherwise, I think even though that was, you mentioned as well, my figures from the first game against Scotland was at 0 for 11 off 2 overs. It wasn't very memorable from a statistics point of view, but I think just bowling for that first time in official German colours was also quite memorable. So there's been a few memorable spells here or there. and it's just always fun to be at the top of the run-up and bowling for your national team. So.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of the matches, you played 38, and hopefully that number will keep going up as the years progress. Who is the most capped women's T20 national cricketer from Germany? Is it you or someone else?
I think it might be me because, I don't think I've missed many games. So we've had a few players, I think there's a few players in the 30s who have then maybe missed 1 or 2 games through injury. I think I might be at the top, but I'm sure one of my teammates will shout at me if I've got that wrong.
You've played 38, and the team's played 38 games in total.
So, there you go. So
there you go. You played every game. So
I think I might be the only one, but I'll double check that, and I'll give whoever, if anyone else has played all of them, I'll definitely give them a shout out. But
definitely, anyone comment in the comments if we're correct or not about Tina being the most capped women's T20 international cricketer for Germany. We would like to know, but I think you are because you played every game as the team has played every game as well. So, since 2019, that's pretty good. You haven't been injured or anything like that. So you've been lucky with the injuries and not missing out a lot of games, which is fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a few times where they've had to kind of patch me up and roll me onto the pitch. I remember a few occasions, and definitely one in Rwanda where we kind of were suffering a bit from some kind of bug. And yeah, I was rolled onto the pitch then and rolled back off, I think, when I finished my innings. And the last couple of games last year in the World Cup qualifier in Jersey were, I think my arm had pretty much seized up at that point, but I generally try and play as many games as possible, and you have to drag me off the pitch at the end, especially when it comes for playing for Germany. I don't want to miss out on those opportunities, so I play as much as I can, and hopefully I can keep up that 100% record for as long as possible.
Yeah, hopefully, maybe play 100 in a row. I don't think anyone's done that in women's T20 nationals, play more than 100 consecutive matches in a row. I know it's been done in men's test matches many times before. There's been a lot that have played 100 test matches in a row. But you could create a new record, Tina. You keep going and the body stays fit and healthy. You never know.
Aim high, Let's get to 50 first and then see where we're at.
Well, let's race the half century first.
Exactly. Yeah.
But, dare to dream, as they say, dare to dream. Records are meant to be set and broken, so why not? Even though the game's not based on breaking records or stats.
Sure.
People who are listening, don't focus on that. Just focus on playing the game and doing your job. But when records do come around, they're there to be broken and set and benchmarks and make people and players get better and challenge themselves, which is what record breaking and setting is all about. So you mentioned that your mother and father are both from Germany and England. That leads into my next question, is that you had a choice to pursue a professional career in England because you lived in England and now you moved back to Germany to play for the women's team and pursuing a career with the women's team in Germany. And I suppose it's the case with many associate players and many international players from 4 member nations. They often have dual citizenship. They often play for one country or the other. And that was the case when we spoke to Kendall Katawaki Fleming, the men's captain from Japan. He's from Australia, and he moved from Japan to Australia. So his family's from Australia as well as in Japan as well, but he chose to play for Japan. So in your case, you ended up playing for Germany. So talk us through that decision, Tina, to play cricket for Germany rather than pursue a career with the England women's team. Was it an easy decision? Was it a difficult decision? Was it a straightforward one, knowing that I'm from Germany, my roots are here, my family's here, this is what I want to do? So just talk us through that decision-making that you had to make.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, it wasn't like England were knocking on my door being like, please come and play for us. So I think it's important to make that clear. But I think at the time, it wasn't really an obvious decision for me, actually, because my grandmother on my dad's side is Irish, I could play for Ireland as well. And there was a time when I was about 18 that I was actually exploring that option. So I went to Ireland, I trained a bit with them, and I was going through the process of trying to get an Irish passport so that I could play for Ireland. Unfortunately, that didn't work out because of the bureaucracy involved in getting an Irish passport.
Mm.
And then, yeah, I had the taste of playing for Germany when I was on my year abroad. So when I was 20, 21. And at that point, it wasn't really a choice because it wasn't really, and it still isn't really a career to play for Germany. We're still very much amateur players. So I think the decision was more based on where I wanted to live beyond cricket, because despite what it might seem, there are things beyond cricket. And after I graduated, then I wanted to move back to Germany because I'd established the links with the German team here. I also play football, so I had my football team here. I had my friends and family, some of my family here. So it was more of a choice of where I wanted to live between Germany and England. And once that choice was made and then the opportunities presented themselves through the German cricket team, then it actually became quite an easy choice. And luckily, I'm still able to go back to England in the summer and play some competitive cricket there. So I think I have been able to get a nice balance between the two countries. Of course, I get this question asked to me a lot, whether I could just go back to England and try and make it professional there. But it's never something. I mean, I've just turned 30, so it's not quite that the ship has sailed now. But I think I've made my decision. I couldn't be more comfortable with the decision I've made, because if I look back at all of the experiences, some of which we've just touched on, that I've able to have with the German national team, both on the pitch, but actually more so off the pitch, just seeing different parts of the world and getting to know some of the closest friends I have through the national team. These are opportunities I might not have gotten in England. I might have been able to play for a regional setup, or in the very best case, somehow get near the England team. But ultimately, we never know what could have happened. And all I can look back on is what I did achieve or have achieved with the German team and the memories I've made there. And yeah, I think looking back on that, it was such a good decision for me. And yeah, it's one I would make again in a heartbeat, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess everyone's in a different situation. Depends where you are in life, as you touched on there. And, as I said, everyone's in a different boat, really, when it comes to that. But I suppose you always have a fallback. You have another option. If it doesn't quite work out, you can explore that option. What advice would you give to any cricketer, either male or female, who are in a similar boat, that can play for two countries and tossing up between, if I play for this country, I have more of a chance, I have better facilities, all that stuff. If it's a full member country, or compared to an associate country where they don't quite have the foundational base as yet with their cricket. So what advice would you give to players who are in that similar situation that you had to navigate through?
I think one of the main pieces of advice I would give is just to keep an open mind, because a lot of people would, if they look at the choice that I might have had between staying in England and the facilities that you have there, even on a regional or county level, compared to Germany, where we're still at a stage where we have to explain what cricket is to the locals quite often. You'd think, okay, there's no choice there. You should just stay in England. But again, just if I look back at the experiences I've been able to have through cricket in Germany, that's something I never would have been able to have in England. So I think just keeping an open mind, and also just do what you enjoy doing and what's fun for you. Because of course, going down a professional route is quite a grueling and intense setup, and it's something that you really have to commit 100% to. So if you have that kind of drive and commitment, then do that and try that. But that's not the be all and end all, I'd say. There's more to cricket and more to life than just, climbing your way to the top and doing everything you can to, earn money or get the best records or whatever it might be. Cricket as a sport is so much more than that. And the experiences I've had through through playing for and in Germany, more than any kind of money that you might earn or records that you might break. So I think, just keeping a bit of perspective about ultimately cricket is a game that we enjoy and it should be for fun. And I think that's served me well and has brought me to, I think, where I am today, where I'm enjoying my cricket and not necessarily trying to put too much pressure on myself about where I end up or what my batting average is or anything like that.
Yeah, no, I think that's great advice. I think a lot of people will take that advice on board and, have that perspective. It's just a game, cricket. It's not the be all end all of your life. It's a part of your life, but if you can, make a difference, which you are doing in Germany with associate cricket, teaching people how to play the game and develop and grow it, especially in women's cricket, but also the game in general more broadly, then you've done something that can make a difference to the game, and you're not worried about it's great having an opportunity to play for a national team and that's ticked off the list or whatever, but it's more to that. It's more to help and grow the game and develop it and to be a part of it and give back in a way, which we tend to forget sometimes in cricket, that we can take this game for granted, but we can't. Because it's such a wonderful game and we have to give back and help out the best way we can. And you're certainly doing that at the moment, and you're doing a great job at that. So that's great advice. And that's a perfect segue into our next question that I have for you, Tina, is balancing cricket and real life, which a lot of players have to toss up and balance. Now, outside of cricket, Tina, you work for a company in Hamburg in Germany called Statista. Oh, there we go. I stuffed up the name. Statista. Oh, geez. Anyway, let's just roll with it. Which is a stats-based company in Hamburg, which mainly focuses on data research, and you head up a team which concentrates on sports and recreation, as well as travel and tourism. And also the company covers cricket as well. So you've done a stat based on your own cricket. So you've created a statistic for yourself, which is pretty unique. Not many cricketers can say that about themselves. Oh, I've got a stat about me that I've created in my line of work and profession. So Tina, how important is it to maintain a healthy balance between cricket and real life? And tell us a bit more about your job and what you do within stats and analytics and data.
Yeah, so to my job, it's actually Statista is somewhere I've been working at since my year abroad. So actually about the same time that I got involved in Germany cricket, I also first started working at Statista. And yeah, we do a lot of data research and analysis and put together statistics on any given topic. So as you mentioned, we do mostly sports and also tourism. So I head up a team who compiles data and reports on any given topic that you might think of within those categories. So we've done reports on the 100 in cricket. We've also done reports on, the impact of coronavirus on travel and tourism and anything in between. And it's a job that I really love doing because I work on things that genuinely interest me. So if you tell me that I can just research cricket stats all day, then I would probably do that for free, let alone get paid for it. So that's been a really good opportunity for me. And it's also been a great way to balance, as you said, work and sport and life, and the flexibility of that job, especially since the pandemic, being able to work from home, being able to actually work from the UK has allowed me that flexibility to then work cricket into my life, which probably means that's why I've been able to play, all 39 games for Germany, because my job has afforded me a bit of that flexibility. And I think it's definitely important because we're still at not at the level where we're earning money through cricket, that it's important to keep this perspective and to have things to do outside of cricket. In this case, my job, which I really love doing, and I also play football, spend time with family and friends. So I think because cricket can be quite an intense environment and obviously quite time consuming, on the German national cricket side, we don't train every week just because of the nature of how big Germany is as a country. But we might train every month doing a training weekend. So that means you're spending 3 or 4 days away from your friends and family. So, and then let alone when you go on tours to, Rwanda or Oman, you're away for 2 weeks at a time, which is an amazing experience. But I think it's then important when you come back from that to have some time away from cricket. And football is a big thing for me then, just being able to run around and kick a ball rather than throw a ball. That's a way of me kind of letting off steam from the pressures of work and life and cricket. So yeah, it's nice to have the balance, and my job definitely allows me to have that balance too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's great to hear. And I guess all associate players are in the same boat, really, because most of them are not professional. They have jobs, they have their lives, and they play cricket just because they can, because they love it and enjoy it, and they want to do something different. But also being real as well, that life doesn't stop, even though if you play cricket. And eventually, you can't play cricket forever, so you have to do something after cricket as well. So that's good that you enjoy what you do and your job. Stats, there's always a good stat in cricket, isn't there? There's always a million stats to look at, anyone who's a cricket tragic like myself, and probably you as well, would probably dig deep into history and look at the stats. Oh, this team, created a record today, yada, 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 and all that stuff. It's just fantastic. And even the stat about yourself is quite unique as well. Tell us a bit about that. Why did you decide to create a statistic about yourself and about how you go about things in cricket? It's quite unique.
Yeah, it was a bit of a cheeky one, to be fair. So I don't think necessarily the statistic clients are clamoring for a stat on, I think it was the highest T20I partnerships in women's cricket. So me and Janet, again, in that famous Austria series, put on a partnership of, I can't remember, 160 odd, I think. And I think at the time it was the second or third highest partnership ever, I think, in T20Is, and it might have been the top or the highest ever opening partnership. So yeah, I thought it'd be fun just to kind of combine the two parts of my life to make a statistic about it, just so that, I could have a little joke with my colleagues that I've actually spent my day doing stats about myself. But it was meant more as a joke than anything. But it's cool when those kind of things overlap. And it has got quite a few clicks, actually. I mean, cricket stats are always going to be very well sought after. And I have to try and stop myself and a couple of my colleagues who are very big into cricket as well, of going down the rabbit hole of doing too many cricket stats, because it's once you go down that kind of wormhole, there's no coming out of it. So that was a cool little fun afternoon's work to put my own name on Statista. But I won't be doing that too often. I think if my bosses catch wind of me just doing stats about cricket the whole day, and especially if I'm involved, then they might kind of question what I'm doing. But yeah, it was fun to put myself on the platform there.
Yes. I'm sure you've heard of them. You heard of the ACS, which is the Association of Cricket Statisticians and Historians. Yes. So, which pretty much govern the stats of the game and create all the records in that and all that stuff. So, they'll definitely give you a job there, doing statistics with the ICC, etc., as they do with their statisticians and that. And we actually spoke to one of them on the podcast a few months ago about that, which was quite interesting, actually, about how all the statistics work and how it's all collated and how they, what the ICC do with it. How do you credit a player with, their stats that they've scored in a particular game, etc. So it's quite interesting when you look at that in a cricket perspective. Any advice for anyone who wants to get into statistics and data and go down that rabbit hole as a professional job? What tips would you give to people who are interested in that sort of field?
I think one of the main tips is just to be curious about things. I think that's almost how I got into it. Not necessarily just on the cricket level, but just be interested in what's happening in the world around you and why things are happening and, trends in the world. There's so many stats can kind of combine everything that's happening in the world, and there's a stat for everything. And that's what we try to do on our platform as well. And I think in order to get into that, you just have to be interested in what's happening and try and find out more. I mean, that's kind of the role of data journalists, of scientists, of journalists anyway. It's just to ask, okay, why is this happening, or why is this like that? And I think if you start off from that point of curiosity, then the passion for whatever you do kind of shines through, whether that be, you know, sports statistics or any other kind of journalism or research. You've really got to have a passion for it and, you know, be curious about what's happening in the world around you. And I think if you start from that point, then you could definitely find your way in a career like that.
Definitely. Great advice. Couldn't agree more with what you said there. And I suppose cricket's a good way to do that because there's a lot of trends and patterns and, you know, all that stuff. And so it's a perfect place to start if you want to get into that professional thing and analytics and data and stats, which has become more and more in the game of cricket. Do you ever have that for the German women's team? Do you have an analyst? Do you have a statistician or anyone that works on the team?
We don't have a specific role for that, but we've had coaches in the past in particular who are very into it because of the nature of associate cricket. We unfortunately not yet have, you know, roles to give out for analysis or for S&C or for physios. So we kind of have coaches who are amazing at fulfilling all these roles in one. So our two former coaches, Laddie and Michael, they were very much into the statistics, and it was always a running joke within the team that Laddie was there with his spreadsheet and dot ball percentages, and it's kind of, that's a classic situation in associate cricket where you just have people who are so passionate and engaged in the game that they do this and they're not getting paid, and they're doing it because they love the game and they bond with the team. And Laddie was then poring over his spreadsheet for hours and hours to then give us the data for, you know, we should be turning the dots into ones, the ones into twos. And we kind of did our own in-house analytics then to see how we could get ourselves to the next level. And those kind of things certainly help. And in future then, as hopefully, you know, we climb up the rankings, the budget grows, then we'll be able to really invest in these kind of things, because I think that's what you see at the top level. And I think to get to the top level, you do have to kind of build up these habits and get onto that level yourselves. So hopefully that's something we can look into more in the future for the German team too.
Definitely. You ever tried it yourself? Bit curious about, yeah, why not? Let's just give it a go. Let's just try a little bit of analytics or data on a particular game that we've played or something. You ever done that yourself, or you haven't?
Not so much. It's a weird one, actually. I don't, for my personal stats or for the team stats, I try to not get too involved in it because I think I would drive myself insane again, because I do that as a job. I think if I started doing that for cricket, which is more kind of my passion, I would never be able to stop. So I try and just, when I'm playing for the national team, I try and just be a player and a vice captain and support the team, but leave the analytics to the experts. And I'm happy. I like looking at the data. I like using data to try and see how we as a team or myself as an individual can improve. But I leave that to the experts. Otherwise, I think I'll never be able to sleep again.
Yeah, I can imagine. Just numbers running through your head.
Right.
0, 1 all the time. Oh, yeah, I can imagine it'll be a bit stressful there. So, well, that's good to hear. Obviously, that curiosity side as well, wanting to learn more and learn from the data and the stats, which pretty much is what cricket and sport is based off now these days. You didn't have that back in the old days. They didn't care about that. You just walked out there and played the game and then had a bit of a chat afterwards. How can we get better today?
And that's why it's interesting as well, because when I bat, I am still quite old school in that I don't try to think too much about these things. When I'm actually out there in the middle, I just try and hit the ball. And I often then, after the game, get asked by, you know, teammates or whoever it might be about what I was thinking and why I played that particular shot and whether I had the data in mind. And often I'm just like, I just played. I don't try and think about it too much. I think data is amazing and it can really complement your team and help you to get to that next level. I think it can be overused. Ultimately, we are still just standing there with a bat or with a ball, and it's just humans against humans at the end of the day. So I think sometimes you do lose a bit of perspective when it comes to the amount of data that you can use. So when I'm actually playing myself, I try to just put that to one side, and it's served me well throughout my whole career to just not think too much about anything. So that's why I'm trying to keep in that space and not think too much about, the percentages and where I should be playing the ball and what percentage likelihood it is that the bowler's going to York me next ball or whatever it might be, because I think that will just drive you insane as well.
Yeah, definitely. No, you need the old instincts in the game of cricket. And then you see other teams like England, for example, they held up weird numbers.
Right.
Yeah. What does that mean? Different code and whatever, but cricket's all about the matchups and the stats between a particular batter and bowler. And then you hear commentators say, it's good to have that information, but go on gut instinct. You want to bowl this bowler to this batter, they may not match up well, but will it get you a wicket or will you score runs off this bowler? Just do it. I couldn't agree more. We get sort of sucked into the whole data and technology side of things. And just use the old brain for once,
right?
In the game. That's what they've done for over 100 years, and it's worked for the players that have played the game over 100 years or more. They've just used their head and initiative, and they've done pretty well. So that's the top tip for everyone. Just go with your instincts, and the rest will take care of itself. Obviously, Tina, many players have mentors that they turn to when they are struggling and they need help within the game of cricket. And many people have helped you on your journey. And you've mentioned coaches and all that stuff, family. So tell us, Tina, who have been your mentors that you turn to in your cricket career? Whenever you're struggling, you need help, guidance, who were some of the mentors that you turn to seek that advice?
I think the main one for me would be our ex-national team coach, Michael Thulis. So he came in, I think, just before the ICC qualifiers, the first round in 2019. So he had been with us from the very start of our international journey, and he just stopped last year. So he was with us for basically 5 years from the very start to where we are now. So during that time, he was massively played a massive role in this kind of development in German cricket, and he was the one that pushed me to go from batting number 4 to opening. And I did it very reluctantly at the start, and then after a while I kind of had to begrudgingly accept that he might have had a point. So he was definitely the one that I always turn to, and still do, actually. So if there's any kind of mental questions I have, or tactical questions or technical, he's always the one that I turn to, and I know a lot of the team turn to him as well. So he was probably the most figure that shaped German cricket the most over the last 5 years. So I think German women's cricket has a massive debt to pay to him. And I think he will remain probably my mentor, because he won't have a choice in it. So I'll continue phoning him up if I have any kind of problem. So he was definitely kind of the number one mentor that I've had in my cricket career.
Yeah. Anyone else besides him, of course? Anyone else?
So I think my boyfriend has played cricket as well for a long time. So coming home, I always bounce ideas off him and talk to him about it. And obviously he's following a lot of all of the games on the live streams as well. So he's usually at work, and he works here in Hamburg as well. So most of his colleagues have no idea what he's doing or what he's watching, but he's usually screaming at the screen while I'm batting. And he obviously then has a different perspective as well, because he can see what it looks like on the TV rather than when you're standing out there in the middle. So he's sometimes my biggest critic and my biggest fan. So having him in my corner is obviously great as well, and he has helped me along the way, and obviously sees the personal side of it as well. I think it's often important to kind of decompress and switch off from the cricket side as well, and not talk about cricket for a while. And he's definitely helped me with that as well.
Yeah, that's fantastic to hear. Always good to have the support of the better half. Obviously, you need their support as well. So that's good to hear about the mentors and people that have helped you on your journey, which is fantastic. And over your career, Tina, you've played with and against some of the world's best players in the world, played at some of the most iconic grounds in world cricket, and been to so many countries while playing cricket as well. So, Tina, this is a bit of a mouthful, but bear with me. If you had to choose your favourite player to play with and against, your favourite ground, and your favourite country that you've played cricket in, what would they be? I know that's a bit of a long mouthful of a question, but if you can try and answer that, that'll be much appreciated.
Yeah, so I'll start with the favourite player. So I think it's so difficult because there's so many. I don't just want to, be dropping names. But yeah. I think Chamari Atapatu has to be up there because the way she's obviously left-hand batter as well. And the way I've never seen anyone hit the ball as hard and as cleanly as she does. So she would definitely be on my team. I'd be absolutely terrified and luckily I've only been on her team and I've never been against her. I definitely want her on my team rather than on the other side. Yeah. From a bowling perspective, I'd say the same for Marizanne Kapp as well. I've only ever been on her team. Again, I wouldn't want to be the other side of her bowling. And then I think Danny Wyatt would have to be up there as well, just as in terms of a teammate. She's the best teammate you could ask for, just in terms of what she brings to, the squad atmosphere. And also she happens to be a really good player as well. So I think those three would probably be up there. If I wanted to challenge myself, they could all be on the opposing team as well. And I'd probably last about one ball. But yeah, those three would be up there. And I think from a German national team perspective as well, we've got Kartika, who's our keeper. I think she's always someone you want on your team just because of how loud and vocal she is behind the stumps. Again, I think I would be annoyed within about 2 balls if I was batting and she was chirping in my ear the whole time. So yeah, I've been really lucky enough to play with so many amazing players just in terms of personality, but also talent and commitment. I think you have players like Danny Wyatt and Chamari Atapatu who are just amazing players and the skill they have is incredible. And I think what you see a lot of in associate cricket is that you have the commitment because players don't have access to nets necessarily. They've got to drive hours and hours to just play a game. And so what we might not have in pure God-given talent, whatever you want to call it, people make up for with just commitment and a love of the game. Because you don't play cricket in Germany or in any other kind of associate country if you don't love the game, because then you just give up. I don't want to drive 5 hours to play 3 hours of cricket. I'll just play football or I'll play tennis. And so I think that really sets associate cricket apart, or the players in associate cricket apart. Next, so the stadium, I think I been lucky enough to play at Lord's. So I think that would be up there just as, I think it's probably up there for any cricketer in the world. But on the other end of the scale, I've played on an island called Heligoland, which is just a tiny island in the North Sea. I say played because it was just it's a touring match. We have a team that's based in Hamburg called the Heligoland Pilgrims, and every year we play a touring side, quite often from England or somewhere else where they like drinking alongside the cricket. And we play on this island in the North Sea, which takes about 4 hours to get there on a ferry. And we play on a football AstroTurf pitch. And our sponsor is a very well-known German beer brand. So there's about as much beer as there is cricket, but I think that's probably up there in terms of places I've played, which are just the complete other end of the scale to Lord's. And then I think country or location, away from the cricket, I'd say Oman was probably the best place that I've been lucky enough to visit through cricket. That was February 2020. So Germany just managed to sneak that tour in before the pandemic hit. And that was just an unbelievably beautiful country, amazing, welcoming people. We played at the Oman Cricket Centre, which I think was then used subsequently for World Cup qualifiers. And we played under floodlights there. That's the first time and only time so far that Germany's played a day-night game. It was a night game because it was a 2020. So yeah, I think again, just Oman is probably a country I never would have visited otherwise in my life as just privately, and to be able to visit places like that and experience the culture and the cricket and the people through playing associate cricket is something that's just really, really special. So yeah, I think Oman would be the top country for me.
Yeah, good answers to all of them. I think that ground that you described near the North Sea and comparing it to Lord's, well, let's just say it's a bit more vocal and loud and no dress code, and you can do whatever you want.
Exactly.
Which is fantastic.
It's the beauty of cricket, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's the beauty of cricket. You can play any game on any surface that you want, even on ice as well,
Right.
which has been done a few times. So you can play it on any type of surface around the world and enjoy the great game of cricket for what it is. So great answers, Tina. Whenever I ask that question to people, they always struggle because it's like, so many options to choose from, and it's a bit of a tough one. But I think you did pretty well there. So thanks for answering that. Obviously, reflection, and often players reflect on their careers eventually when they retire or during their career. You look back whenever you achieve a milestone or something like that. And Tina, your career isn't done yet. You just had your birthday. You're 30 now. So you've got a few more years left before you hang up the spikes and pull up stumps. But you still have more to offer the game and for women's cricket in Germany as well. Do you ever take a moment to reflect on your journey, and what are you most proud of, and do you have any regrets?
Yeah, I definitely have had chances to reflect just in the context of the national team. If I look at where we started, so when I joined in 2016, and we were just playing locally to me, so in the north of Germany against Denmark on an AstroTurf pitch. It's a beautiful pitch, but it was just an AstroTurf, and it was just basically a collection of players from Germany playing cricket, because we were basically the only 11 in the country, more or less, who were playing cricket. And we played Denmark against the only 11 Danish players who played cricket. And if I reflect on that, and then the next milestone being the first T20I qualifier, to then 2 years ago playing in a 8-team tournament in Rwanda against teams from all over the world, I think we as a country and as a squad can be really, really proud of how we've managed to go on that development. And I think I was just very fortunate, and I'm very grateful to just have played a tiny part of that journey. And I think when you look at the highs and lows of a cricket career, you can always have, regrets about, oh, why did I leave that ball, or why did I chip that ball straight to mid-on or mid-off? But I think on the wider things, I tried to not have regrets, because even like as we spoke about earlier, the decision about staying in England or moving to Germany, again, all of what happened subsequently came as a result of that decision. So I would never regret making that decision. So I try not to regret anything that's happened. I try to make the best of things, even if it at the time didn't seem, like the right decision or the right outcome. I think we always come up with challenges in any kind of career or any part of life. And so, yeah, try not to live with regrets and just be grateful for the journey that we've been on so far, and also looking forward to maybe what's to come in the next 5 or 10 years. And I can't wait to see where German cricket goes and to try and play my small part in that.
Absolutely. I think that's a great answer there. Just be grateful, as you said, on the journey, and just enjoy it, really. Don't take it too seriously. Yeah, you're playing international cricket, of course, but it's all about the relationships and the bonds you make with your teammates and the memories that you create. That's what it's all about when you play cricket. So you want to remember those for a long time. So good answer there. Tina, before we move on to our next topic, one more question to ask is, what advice would you give to young girls who want to play cricket or a sport and have ambitions of playing cricket or sport at the highest level? What advice would you give to those young girls who may be listening?
I think my main piece of advice would just be to enjoy it. I think it's a common theme of what we've kind of discussed in the last few minutes, is that you do this because it's meant to be fun. And whether that be playing on an island in the North Sea, or playing at Lord's, or, opening the batting for England, or batting 11 for Germany, these are all, the common thread is that you do it because you enjoy it. And I think you always get the best out of your game if you do enjoy it. If you start putting too much pressure on yourself, and I've had first-hand experience of this, of putting so much pressure on yourself that actually by thinking so much about I need to perform, the opposite happens, and you start not being able to perform because you're so tense by the pressure you've put on yourself. And it's usually the pressure that you put on yourself rather than the pressure that's put on by teammates or by coaches. So I think the main piece of advice would just be to enjoy it. And if you do enjoy it, then you start thriving because, you know, you want to go to training, you want to push yourself, not because you feel like you need to impress anyone or you have a point to prove, but you just want to improve yourself. You want to have a nice time. And ultimately, you enjoy the game a lot more if you have success. And this doesn't necessarily mean winning a game. It means, you know, maybe you go from bowling 1 wide and over to not bowling any wides, or you go from scoring 5 runs to 10 runs, whatever these small kind of steps might be. You get a lot of joy from, you know, personal victories. And I think concentrating on yourself, but also, you know, feeding off the energy and the enthusiasm of your teammates goes a long way. And I think if you ask any professional cricketer how they started, it was all from, you know, I just wanted to have fun, like me playing with my brother in the garden. You don't start because you're being forced to do it or because you feel like you have to earn money or anything like that. If you start from a base of I want to enjoy myself, then I think a lot comes from that.
Yeah, but I think that's great advice. It's all about the enjoyment factor and just enjoying the game for what it is. And you hear a lot of players say that, just play cricket, just have fun. You know, that's why we all play it. So I think that's fantastic advice to give to anyone who wants to aspire to be a professional athlete or cricketer, either boy or girl. So that's fantastic advice there, Tina. Tina, I thought we talk about the German women's cricket team, because that's the reason we got you on, to talk about the women's team and the progress that's been made there in terms of women's cricket in Germany and how you're doing to promote and grow the sport in Germany. Be good to gain your insights on the women's team and learn more about their achievements, the players' stories, because many of them come from diverse backgrounds. And the team has come on leaps and bounds over the years, Tina, and have traveled around the world to tour countries like you mentioned, Oman and Rwanda in Africa, and also partake in the, you know, regional round of the ICC Women's T20 World Cup qualifiers every 2 years when they come around, with the goal of hopefully making a women's T20 World Cup one day, which is the ultimate goal for the team going forward. So, Tina, for those who may not know a lot about the German women's cricket team, can you tell us more about them, the players, and some of the stories, and the team in general?
Sure. So we have so many amazing stories in the German national team that you'd almost have to devote a podcast just to each individual story. We often joke that, or it's been joked about us, that I think we're the highest qualified team in the world, because I think we have about 5 PhDs. We have, so Anu, our captain, she has a PhD. She's a biologist. We have, I think she's a cardiologist, but she'll tell me if I'm wrong. I think I might be wrong, but it's an IST, and she's got a PhD, so she's far more qualified than most people. And we have physios, we have doctors, we have teachers, obviously, because everyone has a job alongside playing cricket. So if anything happens on the pitch, we usually have about 3 or 4 people who are qualified in whatever it might be. One of the stories I always pick out is Emma Wagner, when we played our first qualifier in 2019, she was the youngest player by far on the team. I think she was 14 or 15 at the time. So, of course, we made her open the bowling. So she was the first ever bowler to bowl for Germany in a national, in a T20I. And I think she was the first one to get a wicket. So she's always an amazing story because she grew up in Germany, learnt the game in Germany. So, of course, there's a few expats, myself included, who learnt the game in India. I learnt the game in England, Anu learnt the game in India. So there's a few players who kind of came to Germany through circumstances or through family, but actually learnt the game in a, you know, old school cricket playing country, unlike Germany. But Emma, for example, just learnt her cricket in Germany, and then she was opening the bowling and got the first ever wicket for Germany in a T20I. So I think stories like that are amazing. We've got Anna Bierwisch, who also learnt her cricket in Germany. She is not even much of a bowler, but she now has the title of having a hat-trick in a T20I, which she got against Austria. We've got Kartika, who I previously mentioned. She didn't even really play cricket until about, I think, 8 years ago. So she didn't really play cricket before she came to Germany. She grew up in India, so obviously she knew what cricket was, and I'm sure she played a bit of gully cricket. But basketball was actually her sport. But then she came to Germany and picked up cricket, and now she's the wicketkeeper for the national team. So there's so many stories like that of players, through whatever circumstance it might be, somehow ending up in the German national team. And I think it's a real testament to all of their commitments as well, because it's something that you have to put an enormous amount of effort and time into, for sometimes what it feels like not much reward. I mean, we're not paid, but no one does it to be paid, but we do it because we love the game. So it's really a testament to the team's commitment as a whole. And I think that's shown in kind of the journey we've been on in the last 5 years as a team. So as you said, starting off getting basically thrashed by Scotland in the first T20I game, which was a huge learning experience. And it was a tournament that we still enjoyed, for maybe not the results, but for just having the experience and learning so much, to, playing against teams in an African tournament, to competing in, European qualifiers, traveling the world together as a team. So it's been an incredible journey that we've been on. And I think this is just the start as well.
Yeah, absolutely. There's more to come as the team gets better and progress and develop and learn their craft with bat and ball. But have you seen that improvement? Have you noticed that improvement since you came on the scene until now? Have you noticed that the team are getting better? The skills are getting better with bat and ball, and the tactical side of the game's getting better as well?
Definitely. I think the skills is one thing, because that's something you kind of progress through training and stuff, but it's definitely the tactical side that I've noticed the most, because the only way you can really develop that is through playing games. And that's why we learned so much in those first few games where we played Scotland and the Netherlands, we've played Ireland. If you just look at the scorecard, you think, oh, Germany didn't even get close. But if you think then of the learnings that we got from playing against some, proper professional players, and to come up against that kind of professional setup gave us so much experience for then, how do we set fields? How do we go about pacing an innings? How do we set up a trap for a batter to get them out? These kind of things are just the next level, which are beyond just, the basic bat and ball skills, which you can kind of always develop by yourself in the back garden or in a hall. So that's been the most impressive development, I think, for players who might not necessarily have played cricket for 20 years like I have. So these kind of things have kind of been drilled into me since the age of 13. But for some of these players who might not have even been playing cricket 5 years ago, or, haven't had access to watching the Ashes every other summer, who've just grown up in Germany where no one goes to work and says, oh, did you watch the test match, or anything like that. So that's been the most impressive development, just developing these cricket brains and really developing the passion for the game, which we then try and pass on to the next generation. And that's kind of where we are now, to try and make cricket sustainable in the country.
Yeah, absolutely. And I couldn't agree more. Do you feel like that the people of Germany are getting behind the team? Do they know about the team? Are they supporting both the women's and the men's team? Have you felt that support?
So the cricket community in Germany is definitely getting bigger. It's still a case where the support kind of comes within the community rather than from Germany as a whole. But one massive thing that will hopefully change that going forward is that that cricket just became an Olympic sport. And I think from the rumours of what I've heard of how that tournament will be set up, it will probably just be, I think, 6 or 8 teams. So I don't think we're quite at that level yet. But what it will hopefully produce is a lot more interest for the game, of course, more funding as well, because once you're an Olympic sport, you get more funding from your country's Olympic federation. So I think that is kind of a real key milestone that we've had. I think it was maybe 6 months ago or so that it was officially announced. So I think from that, hopefully that will be a springboard where people will see, hopefully German people will see cricket at the Olympics, even if we're not there yet. And that will kind of grow the interest in the game. And, you definitely notice that interest is growing. It kind of started about maybe 10 years ago because of the refugees that were coming to Germany. And the first thing that they wanted to do was play cricket, because they came from maybe Afghanistan or Syria, and they just love cricket. So they come over to Germany and they ask, where can I play cricket? And the first thing that the Germans say to them is, what is cricket? And then the second thing is, okay, we'll try and get you involved, because obviously it's such a powerful tool, sport as a whole, for integration and for community. And I think that's really had a massive impact on the growth of cricket in Germany, is this kind of role that it plays within integration and community. And I think that will hopefully continue to grow, especially on the women's side as well, so that within the next 5 or 10 years, we don't have to actually explain what cricket is anymore, but people are coming to us and asking, where can we play cricket, or where can we watch it? And I think that would be the next stage to kind of bringing cricket to the consciousness of the German people.
Absolutely. And that's fantastic to hear that more people are familiarizing themselves with the game. And you mentioned the Olympics, of course. That's a big game changer for associate cricket, even though they may not participate in the tournament itself. But, you get the extra funding because it's an Olympic sport now, and people will watch it on TV and say, oh, that's an interesting sport. And then they find out, oh, we actually play cricket in Germany, so I might as well get behind the bandwagon and, go and play a game of cricket and support the teams, both the women's and the men's, which is fantastic. In terms of long-term goals, global events, Women's T20 World Cup is the priority, mainly because obviously Germany, they don't have ODI status, and qualification for the Women's ODI World Cup is a little bit difficult, but more easier with the T20 World Cup in terms of that aspect of the game. So the teams played in qualifiers for a number of years now, varied success. So that's still the ambition for the team, to hopefully one day be a part of a global ICC event, whether it be a Women's T20 World Cup or probably an ODI Women's World Cup down the track?
Yeah, definitely. That would be the long-term aim. Obviously, on the back of that, we're kind of hoping that the Women's World Cup will continue to expand in terms of the teams that are participating, because I think, speaking obviously from an associate perspective, there's so much talent on show across associate cricket, women's cricket and men's cricket, that it's a shame that the World Cups seem to actually be getting smaller rather than bigger. I think if you make them bigger, especially the T20 where the games are smaller or shorter, I think this would be an amazing opportunity to showcase the standard of associate cricket. So that would definitely be the aim for Germany. The first step to that would be trying to make that next step. So if we look within Europe, we have a lot of European countries, and then I think the top of that list are countries like the Netherlands, Scotland, and Ireland. Of kind of excluding England, of course. So I think our next goal is to kind of get to that level where we're competing with them in games on like a regular basis. Of course, it's 2020 cricket, so anything can happen on any given day. But I think we want to get to that level consistently, and try to get to the level of world qualifiers for the T20Is. So we're competing with teams from across the world and really matching ourselves up to them, because otherwise it's of course quite difficult with the funding and with our timetables to play teams from all across the world. So I think getting to that next level will really that's our aim, and I think it will really help us as like a springboard for anything that might lie beyond that.
Definitely. Let's hope that's the case, and going forward we can see the German women's team hopefully make it to a T20 World Cup or a ODI World Cup in the women's format, which will be fantastic. It will be a great achievement if you can do that. And Tina, I thought we'd talk about your role in the team. Obviously, we've mentioned it earlier when we talked about your cricket journey, that you're the vice captain, and you bat and bowl in the team as well, in both disciplines. So that's sort of your playing role. But how would you best describe your role in the team as a player, in terms of how the team is configured and the game plan sort of style? and brand of cricket that you play. How do you fit in to the team with your role with Bash and Ball? So just tell us a little bit about that.
So I think I'd probably call myself a batting all-rounder nowadays, which is weird given that, as I said, I started as a bowler. So I try to always lead from the front, from the batting. So I open the batting, and if all being well, I try to build the innings around me. So I know that if I'm there for 15, 18, even 20 overs, that we're going to get to some kind of competitive score. And I'll try and then keep the pressure off anyone else who's coming in, and try and, anchor the innings. And anyone else who comes in can then play their game and play freely without the pressure of trying to score all the runs. So I try to play that, anchor role in the batting. And in the bowling, I try to just kind of be a bit of a joker. So I try and come on whenever I need to. If they need me to bowl at the 11th over and the 18th over and the 20th, I'll do it. And I'll try to just, be as useful as I can to the captain. And then I think from a tactical or from a, personality point of view, I try to be a senior player, because I am aware of the fact that I've played much more cricket than most players on the team, just because of having grown up in England and been fortunate enough to be in quite serious cricket setups from an early age. I try and use all of that experience to help some of the younger players in the team, or maybe just some of the less experienced players, because some of the things I might take for granted in terms of tactics or, the ebb and flow of a game, that might be something that someone else who's not played as much cricket doesn't even think about. So I try and pass on as much of this experience and knowledge as I can, because I think that's how we're going to get better as a team as well, is if we share these experiences and talk about how people felt at certain parts of the game and the tactics. And some of these things are things that you don't even know that it's just innate. And you try and explain this to people so that they might get some kind of feeling for like the intricacies of cricket, or just gut feelings about cricket, which are things that you can only develop having played the game for quite a long time. So that's what I try to do as well, to try and pass on as much as I can, so that we can grow as a team as well.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. Pass on that knowledge that you've learned over the years onto the team. And that can only make the team a better team. And you learn from each other. That's what you do in cricket. You always help each other out, and you learn a lot of things from each other, from either speaking or seeing and adapting, which is fantastic. And as we mentioned earlier, Tina, that you are the vice captain of the team. And then you captain the team, of course, for a few games in the early years of the team's women's T20 national career as a team. And everybody knows in the game that being a captain or vice captain or a position of leadership in cricket is one of the most challenging jobs to do. You got to think about a lot of things on and off the field, trying to manage the team in a way. So, Tina, just tell us about that vice captaincy journey, and how do you balance your vice captain role from your playing role?
Yeah, it's definitely not the easiest thing to do. I always compare it to my other sport, which is football, where the captain doesn't really do much in terms of a tactical point of view. You just play, you're one of 11 players who are playing. Whereas in cricket, you have such a fundamental role to, field placements, to bowling, to keeping the morale up, that it is very difficult to balance. And I wasn't often a captain throughout my younger years, because I'm quite an emotional player as well. So I'm not one to have much of a poker face if I'm, especially, as an opening bowler. They're usually the most emotional and temperamental, and, throwing their arms up in the air when things don't go right. You can see that all the way to the top still nowadays. So that was kind of always the player I was, where I'd kind of wore my heart on my sleeve and didn't often, or didn't always, think about how my behavior would come across to other people. And of course, that's something you learn with age and experience as well. But then taking on that leadership role, it does focus the mind on how you need to be around other people and the role you have in fostering the team both on and off the pitch. So that's what I try to do now in my role as vice captain. Is of course I try to lead from the front with my performances on the pitch, especially when it comes to batting, because I know that if I stay there and I do my role well, that we as a team will hopefully do well. But it's more from like a personality point of view, I think, where the role of captain and vice captain is very important, because you are ultimately the ones that the team look to for, especially when things are going wrong, and you need to be the ones to kind of drag the team out of that situation and to keep everyone together. Because when things go right, it's quite easy. Everyone's happy. No one is upset, and everyone is, getting on with each other. But it's when things go wrong that actually the role of captain and vice captain is very important. And we've had games like that, especially when we've, in the early days, been playing against Scotland and the Netherlands and Ireland, where, if we're very, very honest with ourselves, we went in hoping for a miracle almost. And it's the role then of the senior players, the leadership team, to then bring people together. And even if things are going wrong, to then still draw the positives out of that and to make it into a positive experience, even if you come off the pitch as losers. And I think in any game of cricket, even if you're on the wrong end of a result, there's still positives to take, even if it's just one field change or one catch or one stop or one ball. And I think building on that is always what brings the team together and makes you grow together and, develop as a team.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And it's so important, leadership and leading from example, and actions speak louder than words. They do. So in cricket, that's very true. If you see the captain doing, their thing as a player, then that can feed off the team as well. And saying, well, the captain believes we can win, so why not we? So it's very important, leadership in cricket and in all sports, actually. You've got to have good leaders, and they always separate themselves from the rest. They have different qualities to others that make them good leaders, and we certainly see that in the game of cricket. Any tips you would give for any young cricket captains or people in leadership roles within the game out there? Any tips of advice you would give them?
I think the one advice I would give, and it's not really a cricket specific advice, it's just to be vulnerable and open with your team. Because I think I know that specifically from our team, because we do spend, weeks at a time, sometimes the other side of the world, away from friends and family. So your cricket team does become your family and your friends and your support network. So I think it's, as a captain or a vice captain, it's important to be open with your team, just to show that, you're there for them, and that sometimes captains can kind of be put on a pedestal of these superhuman people. And you see that a lot in men's cricket. And even if you talk about people like Ben Stokes, and he, I think, is superhuman in the way he plays his game, but he also shows vulnerability to the media, to his opponents, to his players. And I think that's what makes him such a strong personality as a leader as well, to show your team that, you're there for them and that they are there for you. And I think that's how you create a really strong team. And it's on the basis of this strong team that you then put in performances, because suddenly you have someone at third man who's, diving face first to stop a ball because they want to do it for their teammates, and not necessarily because they, think about their own health or because they think it's going to win them the game, but they just want to, do it for their teammates, and they know that the teammates would do it for them as well. And I think that all comes from being a strong captain and leading by example and showing yourself as a human to your team. And I think that's really important, and it's reciprocated then from the team as well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Great advice on leadership and captaincy of any team. Great advice there, Tina. I couldn't agree more. And it was just wonderful just to hear your insights about the team. And, it seems like a very happy environment from what you've been saying to me in this chat, which is fantastic. And, it's a great bunch of girls who wanting to play and get better and enjoy the game of cricket, and, have goals and ambitions, and they want to rise up the ranks in the associate tables and rankings, and qualify for these events in the women's game, and get better, and more importantly, be good people, but also be role models as well to any young girls who may be thinking about playing women's sport in Germany or cricket, and just having that uh, you know, being able to see that in action is a wonderful thing. So I think everyone would agree, and with me when I say this, is that we wish all the success for the team going forward in the near
Thank
future.
you.
And yeah, well, we hope the team does well, and we hope to see Germany in a women's T20 World Cup in years to come. Maybe in the Olympics. Who knows? Maybe in 2028. Maybe in 2032 at Brisbane. You may see Germany in the Olympics because they are a proud nation when it comes to the Olympics. They do very well, the Germans. They like to win everything, even cricket if they can. So we wish the team all the best, and we hope the team continues to get better and improve, and really put women's cricket on the map in Germany, and us promote women's cricket amongst the associate world as well. So exciting times ahead, no doubt, but a lot of challenges still to come. But I think the team and yourself can overcome those challenges and really make your mark and stamp on cricket in Germany, which is fantastic. Hi everyone, hope you enjoyed part 1 of our Associate Cricket Series episode with Tina Gough. I hope you enjoyed hearing Tina and I discuss her cricketing journey and the German women's cricket team. Stay tuned for part 2 of our Associate Cricket Series episode with Tina Gough.